A child, no older than 5, whimpered softly from behind the privacy curtain of Bay 3. His mother, pale and clutching his hand, looked on, fear etched into every line of her face. Maya, catching her eye, offered a small, reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her own tired eyes. She leaned over the child, a gentle hand on his forehead. "Hey there, little brave heart. Just a tiny poke, like a mosquito kiss, and then we'll get you feeling all better, okay?" Her voice was soft, melodic, cutting through the ambient noise of the ER. The child's eyes, wide with terror, met hers, and a tiny knot of fear seemed to loosen. He nodded, sniffling, and Maya felt that familiar, quiet satisfaction, a small victory in a world often devoid of them. Later, she found herself by the bedside of Mr. Henderson, an elderly man whose breathing had grown shallow and ragged. His family, gathered around him, whispered their goodbyes, tears streaming down their faces. Maya didn't interrupt, simply stood sentinel, her hand gently resting on Mr. Sleeby Henderson's frail wrist, feeling the slow, fading thrum of his pulse. She offered comfort not with words, but with presence, a silent witness to the profound human experience of grief. When his breathing finally stilled, she was the one who gently closed his eyes, her heart aching with the familiar sorrow that never truly dulled, no matter how many times she bore witness to it. This was Maya, a healer, a comforter, a silent sentinel against the relentless march of suffering. It was during the brief lull before the next wave of ambulances that Maya first encountered the Millers. Mr. Miller, a burly man whose weathered hands spoke of a lifetime of hard labor, lay pale and still on the gurney in Bay 7, a severe heart attack having brought him to their doors. Sarah, his wife, a woman whose face was etched with worry lines, hovered beside him, her distress palpable. Maya had finished her initial assessment, noting the alarming drop in his blood pressure and the faint, anxious tremor in Sarah's hands. "He's going to be okay, Mrs. Miller," Maya had said, her voice calm, professional. "Dr. Chen is with him now, stabilizing him. We're doing everything we can." Sarah's eyes, however, held a deeper, more profound fear than just her husband's immediate health. As Maya adjusted the blankets around Mr. Miller, she overheard snippets of a hushed, frantic conversation Sarah was having on her phone. No, you don't understand, Kevin." The bank called again. They said the final notice is on the door. 2 days, Kevin. 2 days and we're out." Sarah's voice cracked, her hand trembling as she wiped a tear. "Your father. He lost his part-time work when he got sick. The medical bills. We exhausted everything." Maya's movements faltered. 2 days. The words hung in the air, heavy and dark. She knew that look, that desperate, cornered animal fear. It was the look her own mother had worn when, after her father's construction accident, they'd been perilously close to losing their small rented apartment. The memory, a sharp, cold jab to her gut, made her heart clench. The helplessness, the shame, the crushing weight of systemic poverty. She remembered it all too well. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of urgent care and controlled chaos, but the Miller's plight gnawed at her. Even as she charted vitals, administered medications, and calmed anxious patients, Sarah's tear-streaked face and the words, "final notice," echoed in her mind. Finally, at 7:30 a.m., Maya stumbled out of Street Jude's, the morning sun feeling like an alien glare after hours under artificial light. Her apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a holding cell for her exhaustion. She kicked off her shoes, threw her scrubs into the hamper, and collapsed onto her worn sofa. Sleep, however, refused to come. She stared at the ceiling, the image of Mr. Miller's pale face superimposed over the memory of her own parents' terrified eyes. She thought of her own financial situation, the mountain of student loan debt from nursing school, the carefully cultivated savings account, a meager sum, really, earmarked for a down payment on a small condo, a dream of stability that felt impossibly distant. What if, the thought, small and insidious at first, began to blossom, pushing aside her fatigue? What if she could do something, not just for Mr. Miller's physical health, but for his family's very foundation? It was insane, reckless, irresponsible. She had her own future to worry about, her own precarious footing. But then she remembered the way Sarah Miller's hand had trembled, the raw, unvarnished fear in her eyes. She remembered the sheer gratitude of the little boy whose scraped knee she'd patched up, the quiet dignity of Mr. Henderson's family. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about hope. Driven by an impulse she couldn't quell, Maya got up. She opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She researched the Miller's mortgage lender, found their payment portal, and then, with a deep, shaky breath, she pulled up her own savings account. It was a substantial sum for her, enough for a small down payment, enough to make a dent in her loans. But it was also, she realized with a jolt, just enough to cover the Miller's past due amount and halt the foreclosure. Her heart pounded. This was it, the point of no return. She transferred the money. Every penny of her down payment fund. To cover the remaining gap, she found a hospital program she'd heard about in passing. A temporary, significant pay cut in exchange for a contribution towards student loan forgiveness after a certain period of service. It was designed to retain nurses, but for Maya, it was a way to make up the deficit without drawing further attention. She enrolled, effectively sacrificing her immediate financial future, delaying her dreams of homeownership for a family she barely knew. It was done, anonymously, irreversibly, a profound sense of quiet satisfaction, utterly devoid of fanfare or expectation, settled over her. She hadn't sought praise, she'd merely sought to ease a burden. She closed her laptop, crawled into bed, and for the first time in days, truly slept. The weight of the world, for a fleeting moment, lifted from her shoulders. The next morning, the exhaustion was still a dull ache in Maya's bones, but it was tempered by a strange, buoyant lightness. She'd done a good thing. A truly good thing. It was a secret, a quiet triumph she carried within her, like a warm ember. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a small, private smile playing on her lips as she pulled into the St. Jude's parking lot. But the moment she turned the corner to the employee entrance, her lightness evaporated, replaced by a jolt of pure, unadulterated dread. A brightly colored news van, emblazoned with the logo of WKAL-TV, was parked directly in front of the ER doors. A tangle of cables snaked across the pavement, and a petite, impeccably dressed woman with a microphone clutched in her hand was speaking animatedly into a camera held by a burly cameraman. No, it couldn't be. Maya tried to slip past, her head down, hoping to merge into the stream of early morning hospital staff. But the reporter, a woman whose eyes seemed to possess an almost predatory gleam, spotted her. "Excuse me, are you Nurse Maya Rodriguez?" she called out, her voice unnaturally loud, amplified by the microphone. Maya froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She instinctively shook her head, a denial forming on her lips. But it was too late. The cameraman swung his lens towards her, the bright light from the attached lamp momentarily blinding her. "Nurse Rodriguez!" The reporter, whose name she now saw was Brenda Hayes, pressed forward, shoving the microphone practically into Maya's mouth. "Brenda Hayes, WKAL News. We understand you're the unsung hero who saved the Miller family's home. Can you tell us what inspired such an incredible act of selfless generosity?" Maya was utterly blindsided. Her mind raced, grasping for an explanation, a way to deflect. The mortgage lender. They must have leaked it. Seeing a public relations opportunity, they had twisted her anonymous act into a blatant, attention-grabbing spectacle. The thought made her stomach churn. Her good deed, her quiet personal triumph, was now a public commodity. I don't know what you're talking about," Maya stammered, trying to sidestep past Brenda. I was just doing my job." Brenda, however, was tenacious. "Oh, come on, Nurse Rodriguez. We know the story. You took a pay cut, sacrificed your own savings, all to keep a patient's family from losing their home. The Millers are incredibly grateful. You're a local hero," she beamed, clearly expecting a humble, tearful confession. The phrase local hero felt like a branding iron, searing hot and unwelcome. Maya felt a flush rise on her cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and genuine anger. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. This wasn't why she did it. "Please, I need to get to my shift," Maya insisted, pushing past Brenda and making a beeline for the employee entrance, the camera light following her every move. She could feel the stares of her colleagues, the whispers beginning to ripple through the small crowd that had gathered. Her quiet morning had just exploded into a very public nightmare. The story, as Brenda Hayes had predicted, exploded online. By lunchtime, Maya's face, blurry and caught mid-stride, was plastered across local news websites. Hero Nurse was trending on Twitter. Comments poured in, a torrent of praise and admiration. What an amazing human being. This is what true compassion looks like. We need more people like Maya Rodriguez in the world. Initially, the sentiment was overwhelmingly positive, almost suffocatingly so. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from friends and family, all expressing pride and shock. Even some of her colleagues offered hesitant congratulations, though Maya could detect a subtle undercurrent of awkwardness, perhaps even envy, in their gazes. She felt like a fish yanked from its quiet pond and thrown into a blinding spotlight, gasping for air. But the unwanted attention immediately created a host of new, unforeseen problems. Her phone, which she had silenced, kept vibrating with calls from various local charities, national news outlets, and even a reality TV producer. More distressingly, the Millers, particularly the proud and now emasculated adult son, Kevin, were deeply uncomfortable with being portrayed as objects of charity. Kevin had already posted a terse, slightly resentful comment on a local news forum, expressing his family's gratitude, but also our deep discomfort with having our private affairs aired so publicly. The subtle shift in tone, the first crack in the facade of universal praise, was barely perceptible to the public, but it hit Maya hard. Her selfless act was already being interpreted, misconstrued, and causing unintended pain. The first tangible consequence of her unwanted fame arrived swiftly and unceremoniously in the form of an urgent summons to the office of Miss Davenport, the hospital's chief administrator. Miss Davenport was a woman who exuded an icy corporate efficiency, her tailored suits and severe bun-speaking volumes about her priorities. She was less concerned with patient care and more with the bottom line. With the meticulously maintained image of Street Jude's, Maya found herself sitting stiffly in a plush visitor's chair, facing Miss Davenport across a vast, polished mahogany desk. The administrator did not smile. Her eyes, cool and appraising, scanned Maya's file, then lifted to meet hers. "Miss Rodriguez," Miss Davenport began, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "We've been made aware of recent media attention surrounding your professional conduct." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, thick with unspoken criticism. Maya swallowed, her mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, ma'am. I had no idea the news crew would be there. I certainly didn't seek out the attention." Miss Davenport merely steepled her fingers, her gaze unwavering. "Regardless of your intentions, Miss Rodriguez, your actions have created a very problematic situation. Street Jude's has strict policies regarding the professional boundaries between our staff and our patients. Providing financial assistance, especially to the extent that you have, blurs those lines considerably. But I did it anonymously," Maya interjected, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "I didn't want anyone to know. It was a private act of compassion." Miss Davenport's smile was thin, devoid of warmth. "Anonymous or not, the fact remains that a patient under our care, the Miller family, was the recipient of a significant financial gift from one of our employees. This creates a deeply problematic precedent. It exposes this hospital to potential legal complications, allegations of undue influence, exploitation, even a breach of privacy, should the Millers choose to pursue it." Maya stared at her, dumbfounded. "Exploitation? I was helping them. They were about to lose their home." "Your empathy, while commendable in a general sense, Miss Rodriguez, must always remain within the confines of professional ethics and hospital policy," Miss Davenport stated, her voice hardening. "You have, quite frankly, exposed Street Jude's to unnecessary risk. We are not a charity organization for our employees to raid their savings accounts for. We are a medical institution." The words felt like a slap. Raid their savings accounts. Miss Davenport was dressing her criticism in the language of professional concern, but the veiled threats were clear. "You've caused trouble. You've brought negative attention, even if it started as positive, and now you'll pay for it." This kind of emotional overreach, Miss Davenport continued, leaning forward slightly, her voice dropping to a chillingly low tone, can be indicative of a deeper issue, Miss Rodriguez. We need to ensure that our staff are making sound, professional judgments, free from personal entanglement. Consider this a formal warning. Any further blurring of these lines, any further incidents that draw this kind of unwanted attention to the hospital, will be met with severe disciplinary action. Do I make myself clear? Maya could only nod, a cold knot forming in her stomach. The warmth of her good deed, the quiet satisfaction, had been snuffed out, replaced by a chilling sense of dread. Her act of pure altruism, born of empathy and self-sacrifice, was already being twisted and punished by the very system she worked within. The rage bait had begun. The formal warning from Miss Davenport was merely the opening salvo in the hospital's calculated campaign to rein Maya in. The next week, was a blur of passive-aggressive interactions and thinly veiled criticisms. Suddenly, every one of Maya's charts was scrutinized, every interaction with a patient seemingly under a microscope. Her colleagues, once friendly, now averted their gazes or offered quick, nervous smiles. The camaraderie that had been her shield against the relentless demands of the ER began to fray. Then came the summons for an internal review. Miss Davenport herself would chair the committee, flanked by a rigid HR representative and, to Maya's dismay, Dr. Evans, a senior physician who had always maintained a barely concealed contempt for nurses. Dr. Liebervox. Evans, a man of 50-something with an impeccable suit and an even more impeccable sense of self-importance, viewed nurses as glorified assistants, their emotional labor, an inconvenience to his pristine medical science. Miss Rodriguez, Miss Davenport began, her tone utterly devoid of the niceties that usually prefaced such meetings. This review is to assess your professional conduct in light of the highly publicized incident involving the Miller family. Dr. Evans, if you would care to present your observations. Dr. Evans cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles with an air of profound authority. Yes, well, my primary concern, as a medical professional, is the sanctity of the patient-provider relationship. Miss Rodriguez's actions, while perhaps well-intentioned on a superficial level, were deeply unprofessional. They represent a significant emotional overreach, a blurring of boundaries that, in my professional opinion, makes her unsuitable for the high-pressure, emotionally demanding environment of the emergency room. He spoke as if Maya weren't in the room, as if she were a specimen under his microscope, her motivations reduced to a pathological flaw. The ER requires cool, detached logic, not emotionally driven impulses. Imagine the precedent. Every nurse dipping into their pockets for every sob story? It's chaos, it's unprofessional, and frankly, it demonstrates a lack of judgment crucial for patient safety. Maya's jaw tightened. Dr. Evans, with all due respect, my actions had nothing to do with patient safety. I simply helped a family in need. And that, Dr. Evans retorted, his voice dripping with condescension, is precisely the problem, Miss Rodriguez. Your help was unsolicited, outside of your purview, and potentially compromising to the integrity of this institution. He turned back to Miss Davenport, a smug expression on his face. I would suggest a re-evaluation of Miss Rodriguez's capacity to make sound, rational decisions under pressure. The rage bait was working. The audience, reading this, would feel their anger build, seeing Maya's competence, her very humanity, being questioned by this arrogant, self-important man who valued sterile regulations over genuine compassion. But the hospital's machinations didn't stop there. The very act of taking a pay cut to contribute to her student loan forgiveness, a sacrifice Maya had made to make her gift possible, was now weaponized against her. The HR representative, a woman with a perpetually bland expression, spoke next. Furthermore, Miss Rodriguez, we have noted your recent enrollment in the hospital's student loan forgiveness program, which involves a temporary reduction in your take-home pay. While we commend your commitment to financial responsibility, this recent high-profile act of personal financial aid, combined with a seemingly pre-existing financial instability, raises concerns about your judgment and ability to manage your own resources responsibly, let alone those of others. Maya stared at her, incredulous. My financial instability is called having student loans, like every other nurse in America. And I took that pay cut to make ends meet after I gave my entire savings to stop a family from being homeless. Miss Davenport slammed her hand lightly on the table, the sharp sound echoing in the room. Miss Rodriguez, your tone is unprofessional. We understand you are under stress. However, due to the serious nature of these concerns, the blurring of professional boundaries, the potential for legal liability, and the questions raised about your judgment, the committee has reached a decision. Maya's heart sank. She knew what was coming. Effective immediately, Miss Davenport announced, her voice as cold and sterile as a surgical instrument. You are suspended without pay, pending the outcome of a full, independent investigation. This is to protect the integrity of the institution and to ensure that all due processes are followed. You will be notified when a decision has been reached regarding your employment. Suspended, without pay. Maya's breath hitched. She was now without her full income, facing the loss of her career, her financial stability, all for an act of kindness. The injustice of it was a bitter, metallic taste in her mouth. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the polished floor, her hands clenched into tight fists. She wanted to yell, to scream, to lash out at their hypocrisy, but the words caught in her throat, choked by a sudden wave of despair. As if the hospital's bureaucratic assault wasn't enough, the state itself seemed to join the fray. 2 days after her suspension, Maya received a crisp, official-looking letter from the State Board of Nursing. It informed her that a formal complaint had been filed against her for unethical conduct and breach of professional boundaries. The complaint was anonymous, but Maya had no doubt it originated from Miss Davenport's office, a final, vindictive strike. A week later, she received a call from a representative of the State Board, a woman named Miss Albright, whose voice was as devoid of warmth as Miss Davenport's. "Miss Rodriguez," Miss Albright began, her tone clipped and impersonal. "This is regarding the complaint filed against you. We'll need you to come in for a formal interview. This is a serious matter. Breaches of ethics can lead to suspension or even revocation of your nursing license." "But I didn't do anything wrong," Maya pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "I helped a family who was losing their home. How is that unethical?" "Whether or not you believe your actions were wrong is irrelevant to the board's purview," Miss Albright stated, her voice hardening. "Our concern is adherence to the code of conduct and professional standards. You provided financial aid to a patient, creating a dual relationship. This is explicitly prohibited. We are not here to debate your personal motivations, only your compliance with regulations." She spoke to Maya as if she were a criminal, a dangerous rogue nurse who had violated sacred professional tenets. There was no empathy, no understanding, only the cold, unyielding recitation of rules. "We'll send you the official subpoena for the interview," Miss Albright concluded, her voice dismissing any further protest. "Failure to comply will result in immediate suspension of your license." Maya hung up the phone, her hand shaking. The walls were closing in. The system, designed to protect and regulate her profession, was being weaponized against her. She, who had devoted her life to caring for others, was now being treated like a pariah, her good name, her very career, hanging by a thread. The rage, cold and simmering, began to boil. The weight of the suspension and the looming threat from the State Board of Nursing pressed down on Maya, suffocating her. Her once buzzing phone now remained mostly silent, except for the occasional call from a debt collector reminding her of the bills she couldn't pay. The initial flurry of positive media attention had dwindled, replaced by a vacuum of silence, punctuated by the occasional online comment that felt like a fresh stab. Her financial sacrifice, once a source of quiet pride, was now a gaping hole in her budget, a constant, nagging worry. She was picking up a few essentials at the local grocery store, trying to conserve every penny, when a furious voice suddenly shattered the mundane rhythm of her day. "Nurse Rodriguez! There she is!" Maya spun around, her heart lurching. Standing by the cereal aisle, his face contorted with anger, was Kevin Miller, the son. The one who had already expressed his discomfort online. His eyes, usually guarded, were now blazing with an open hostility that chilled Maya to the bone. "Kevin?" Maya said, her voice small, unsure. "What are you doing here?" He stalked towards her, ignoring the curious glances of other shoppers. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here? Did you enjoy playing savior, Miss Rodriguez? Did it feel good to make us look like helpless beggars to the entire city?" Maya recoiled, genuinely stunned by the venom in his voice. "Kevin, that's not fair. I never wanted publicity. I just wanted to help your family." "Help us?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You didn't help us. You put a spotlight on our failure. My father is a proud man, Nurse Rodriguez. A proud man. He worked his whole life, never asked for a handout, and you stripped him of his dignity. Now everyone looks at us with pity, with charity in their eyes. You took that from him." His voice rose, attracting more attention. "I saved your home," Maya countered, her own frustration finally bubbling to the surface. "Your family was days away from being on the street. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to do your job," Kevin snarled, jabbing a finger towards her. "Not parade our misfortune in front of the cameras. We never asked for your charity. We never asked for this humiliation." The accusation hit Maya like a physical blow. Humiliation. It was a truth she hadn't considered, the flip side of her good deed. She had been so focused on saving them from a physical loss that she hadn't anticipated the blow to their pride, especially a proud, working-class family like the Millers. Her initial anger at his ingratitude was now mixed with a sickening wave of guilt. But still, his unbridled rage felt deeply unfair, disproportionate to her intentions. The confrontation escalated. Shoppers stopped, their carts abandoned, eyes wide as they watched the tense exchange. Kevin's voice grew louder, more agitated. "You think you're a hero? You're just a busybody who couldn't mind her own business?" The rage bait intensified, a sickening twist in the gut. The audience knew Maya's intentions, knew her sacrifice, and to see her attacked by the very person she helped, his anger misplaced and unjust, was infuriating. Meanwhile, the media narrative, initially so overwhelmingly positive, began to shift, subtly at first, then more overtly. The initial hero story was slowly replaced by a more cynical, questioning tone. Local news segments now featured expert commentators, vaguely defined as community ethicists or social psychologists, who mused about Maya's motives. "Is this genuine altruism, or a savior complex?" one talking head posited, a knowing smirk on his face. "Did Nurse Rodriguez perhaps seek to fill some personal void through this public display of charity?" Another, a woman with a severe bob and an even more severe expression, added, "And what about the patient's privacy? Was this truly a selfless act, or an unconscious need for validation, even fame?" Online, the trolls multiplied. Comment sections, once filled with praise, now teemed with vitriol. Why did she have to make it public, even though she hadn't? What isn't she telling us? She probably just wanted attention for herself. Anonymous sources from Street Jude's, undoubtedly leaked by Miss Davenport's allies, began to appear in online forums, hinting at deeper issues and unprofessional conduct that the hospital was reluctantly investigating. The online mob, fickle and easily swayed, turned on her with a chilling swiftness, fueled by curated snippets from the news report and the insidious whispers of her professional adversaries. The public confrontation with Kevin at the grocery store reached its climax when, amidst his shouting, a concerned manager, or perhaps another shopper, called the police. 2 uniformed officers arrived, their faces impassive as they assessed the scene. They were young, by-the-book types, clearly annoyed by the public disturbance. "All right, what's going on here?" one of them, Officer Davies, asked, his eyes scanning the agitated Kevin and the distraught Maya. Kevin, seeing authority figures, immediately adopted a calmer, more victimized demeanor. "Officer, this woman has been harassing my family. She involved us in a big news story against our will, and now she's following me, causing a scene." Officer Davies turned to Maya, his expression one of skepticism. "Ma'am, is this true? Are you harassing this gentleman?" "No," Maya exclaimed, her voice cracking. "I'm Nurse Rodriguez. I treated his father at Street Jude's. His family was facing eviction, and I helped them. He's upset because the news found out, but I didn't want any of this to be public." She gestured wildly, trying to explain the tangled web of good intentions and unforeseen consequences. The second officer, Officer Chang, exchanged a glance with Davies. Their faces remained impassive, but there was a subtle dismissiveness in their posture, a clear leaning towards Kevin's narrative. They saw a volatile woman arguing with a man who claimed harassment, not a compassionate nurse unfairly under attack. "Ma'am, whatever your personal issues are with this family, you need to conduct yourself appropriately," Officer Davies said, his tone condescending, as if speaking to a wayward child. "This is a public place. You're causing a disturbance." "But he's yelling at me," Maya protested, feeling a desperate surge of injustice. "He's accusing me of things I didn't do." "And you're arguing back, ma'am?" Officer Chang interjected, his voice flat. "We've had multiple complaints. We suggest you both go your separate ways. If this continues, we can file a report for disturbing the peace." He turned back to Kevin, a hint of something that looked like sympathy in his eyes. "Sir, are you going to be okay?" Kevin nodded curtly. "Yes, officer. Just want her to leave us alone." "Ma'am," Officer Davies turned back to Maya, his voice firm. "You need to leave these people alone. Whatever your issue is, it's causing a public disturbance. We suggest you depart the premises immediately. If we have to come back, there will be consequences." Maya stood there, trembling, feeling utterly powerless. The officers, representatives of the law, were treating her like the aggressor, dismissing her pleas, siding with the person who was unjustly attacking her. She was being punished by the hospital, crucified by the media, and now even the police saw her as the problem. The injustice of it all was a burning knot in her chest, igniting a furious, helpless rage that the audience would undoubtedly mirror. She turned, walking away from the grocery store, away from Kevin, away from the officers, the weight of a system designed to protect, now crushing her instead. The grocery store incident was the final, brutal blow. Maya retreated to her small apartment, a sanctuary that now felt more like a prison. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the relentless buzzing of her thoughts. She was suspended, broke, her reputation in tatters, and the very people she had sacrificed for now seemed to resent her for it. The letters from the State Board of Nursing lay on her coffee table, stark white rectangles of official condemnation. Bills she couldn't pay piled up beside them, a testament to her sudden, devastating financial reality. She sat on her worn sofa, staring blankly at the wall, a profound emptiness hollowing out her chest. Her uniform, once a symbol of pride and purpose, hung limply on the back of her door, a reminder of a life that felt impossibly distant. She had tried to do good, to live by the deepest tenets of her calling, and for it, she was being systematically dismantled. Was it all a mistake? Was her compassion a weakness? An Achilles heel in a world that rewarded cynicism and self-preservation? She questioned the very core of herself, the empathy that had driven her into nursing, the selfless impulse that had defined her. This was rock bottom, the deep, agonizing pit of despair where inspiration seemed to die. Then, a soft knock echoed through the quiet apartment. Maya flinched, her nerves frayed. She rarely had visitors anymore. Hesitantly, she pulled herself up and peered through the peephole. Her breath hitched. Standing on her doorstep, her face etched with a profound sorrow and a nervous hesitancy, was Sarah Miller. Maya slowly unlatched the door. Sarah looked smaller, frailer than Maya remembered, her eyes red-rimmed as if she hadn't slept. "Mrs. Miller?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" Sarah wrung her hands, clutching a small worn handbag. "Maya, I had to come." Her voice was thick with emotion, trembling. "I heard about what Kevin did. In the store. I am so sorry. He's ashamed. Not of you, but of himself. Of our situation. He lashes out when he's afraid. He thinks he's protecting his father's pride, but he's just hurting good people." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, and she took a shaky step forward. "Please, Maya, don't believe what he said. Don't believe what anyone is saying. You saved us. You saved our home. My husband, he's recovering. And he knows. He knows what you did. We never asked for charity, no. But you gave us hope. You gave us a roof over our heads when no one else would. You did not take my husband's pride. You gave my family a home. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Her words, so simple, so genuine, were like a balm on Maya's wounded spirit. A fragile warmth began to spread through her chest, pushing back the cold despair. Sarah's gratitude, unburdened by ego or public opinion, was exactly what Maya needed to hear. It was a clear, shining truth amidst the manufactured lies. Just as Sarah's words began to mend the personal betrayal, a different kind of alliance was quietly forming. Maya's phone, which had been silent for so long, suddenly buzzed with a message from Maria, a veteran nurse and friend, a woman who had seen countless cycles of hospital politics and administrative hypocrisy. "Maya, don't disappear on us. We're not letting them do this to you. Meet me for coffee tomorrow. My treat. We need to talk." The next day, Maria, her no-nonsense expression softened with concern, met Maya at a small, independent coffee shop away from the hospital. She was not alone. Two other nurses, Carla and David, both colleagues Maya respected, were already there. "This is bullshit, Maya," Maria stated, cutting straight to the chase, her voice low but fierce. "We've all been talking. This whole investigation, the suspension, Davenport and Evans trying to make you out to be some kind of rogue nutjob, it's a farce. They want to scare us, make sure none of us ever dare to step out of line, ever dare to show a little human decency beyond what the insurance companies deem acceptable." Carla, usually reserved, nodded emphatically. "They're terrified. The positive PR you got initially? It shone a light on how they aren't doing enough. They want to bury you to prove a point," David added, "but they picked the wrong nurse to mess with. We've all seen the Miller's medical bills. We know the system is rigged. We know what you did was an act of pure compassion, not some calculated risk. And we're not going to let them crucify you for it." Maria leaned forward, her eyes bright with determination. "We can't just stand by. We're organizing. We're using social media, not like that sensationalist news crew, but to tell the truth. To share stories of your exemplary work, your dedication. We're starting a counter-movement. Stand with Maya." She pulled out her phone, showing Maya a rapidly growing online campaign. Nurses from street, Jude's and other hospitals were posting pictures with signs, sharing their own experiences of burnout, understaffing, and administrative indifference. They were sharing anecdotes of Maya's quiet kindness, her professionalism, her unwavering commitment to patients. "We're also organizing a silent protest," Maria continued, her voice firm. "Outside the hospital, peaceful, just us, standing there in our scrubs with signs that say compassion is not a crime and support our nurses, not bureaucracy. We're going to catch the media's attention again, Maya, but this time the narrative is ours. It's controlled by the people who know you best, by the people who work on the front lines every single day." Maya stared at them, tears pricking her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude and a fierce, returning sense of purpose. She wasn't alone. She wasn't a rogue. She was part of a community, a sisterhood and brotherhood of healers who understood the true meaning of care. The rage bait, designed to isolate and infuriate, had inadvertently forged a powerful, unwavering alliance. The tide was turning. The hospital, once so unyielding, found itself caught in a public relations nightmare of its own making. The Stand with Maya movement exploded, not just locally, but nationally. Nurses across the country, tired of being undervalued and silenced, found a voice in Maya's story. The local news, unable to ignore the growing outcry and the images of nurses peacefully protesting outside street, Jude's began to report on the counter-narrative. The carefully constructed image of street Jude's as a bastion of professional integrity was crumbling, replaced by an unflattering portrait of corporate callousness. Faced with the threat of a genuine nurse's walkout, the relentless media scrutiny, and a burgeoning wave of positive public opinion for Maya, the administration finally cracked. Miss Davenport, her usual frosty demeanor replaced by a strained, almost panicked expression, issued a sterile corporate statement. It vaguely referenced misunderstandings and internal communication issues, announcing that the internal investigation into Miss Rodriguez's conduct had been satisfactorily concluded. Maya's suspension was lifted, effective immediately. There was no apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just a terse notification that she was expected back on her next scheduled shift. Dr. Evans, now looking distinctly less smug, was forced to work alongside her, his attempts at avoiding eye contact almost comical. The system had bent, not broken, but it had yielded. Maya walked back into Street Jude's, her uniform feeling lighter, imbued with a new kind of strength. The fear and despair were still a lingering shadow, but they were now eclipsed by a quiet resolve. As she entered the ER, the familiar sounds and smells no longer felt oppressive. Instead, they were a vibrant symphony of life and purpose. Her colleagues, alerted to her return, broke into spontaneous, heartfelt applause, their faces beaming with pride and solidarity. Maria hugged her fiercely. Carla and David clapped her on the back. Later that week, a nervous knock on the ER door revealed Kevin Miller. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes downcast. "Nurse Rodriguez," he mumbled, fidgeting. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For what I said, for how I acted. My mom told me, she set me straight. And my dad, he wants you to know he's getting better. And he's grateful. We both are." Maya met his gaze, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "It's okay, Kevin." She meant it. The anger had faded, replaced by understanding. Maya returned to her duties, her hands moving with the same practiced efficiency, her voice still carrying the same gentle reassurance. The system was still broken in many ways. The hospital still valued profits over people, and nurses would continue to fight for better conditions. But Maya's act of kindness, though it had cost her dearly, had exposed the cracks in that system. It had forged an unbreakable bond with her community, with her fellow nurses, and had shown that one quiet act, driven by pure human compassion, could indeed make the loudest, most enduring noise. She was not just a nurse, she was a beacon, bruised but unbroken, a living testament to the power of empathy in a world that desperately needed it.